Hi, this is Brian Fogarty, and this is a video for Chapter 8 of the book Quantitative Social Science Data with R, 2nd edition. So in this video we're going to take a look at scatterplots, and this is the first one of several we'll do with scatterplots, and we'll start with the most basic, which is just using two variables. So depending on your field, your discipline, and then subfield and all that kind of stuff, you might not actually use scatterplots a lot because you need to have an x and y variable, so two variables, one that you're going to plot on the x, one to plot on the y, that are integral ratio, and then on top of it you want them to be somewhat continuous. Specifically, we don't have tons of gaps in them or chunks or clustering or stuff like that. So if you work with survey data a lot, you often are not able to use scatterplots. It's really going to depend on the type of data you have. All right, so we're going to do a scatterplot using the SIMD data. We have percent depressed already. We want to get a second one, and we're going to use the variable that we're calling employment deprived or employment deprivation. In the data it is as employment rate, and so this variable is the people who are out of work and receiving government benefits. So there's a sort of a long technical group of folks, but that's essentially what it is. All right, so this variable is not converted to a percentage, so we want to do that. All right, so we're going to use mutate function. We're going to call percent underscore employment underscore deprived, and then we're going to take employment rate times 100. Just to remind you, this version is lowercase because at the first video in this chapter we lowercased everything. All right, so let's create that variable. We can get an error, and then let's take a quick look at it using summary. And again, specifically what we're doing here is we're checking for missing values. Actually, I put deprived, but I want deprived. I'm gonna redo this. Okay, let's redo that and run that. Okay, so we see there's 3 missing values, so we need to include that in the filter function. One of the nice things that I like with R is that we can just overwrite a variable we created, where like in stata, by default it won't let us overwrite it. That's pretty nice. Okay, so let's get into our plot here. We're going to use SIMD first. We're piping, use a filter. All right, so not is missing, and percent depressed. This is what we used before. And then we're going to use and, the ampersand, not is NA, not missing, for percent employment deprived. Okay. And then piping, and then we have our ggplot. Here, this function, we don't need to include anything in the parentheses because the data is declared up here. All right, and then plus. One thing I'll mention is that how I'm indenting this, it doesn't really matter. I just do it because I like how it looks. I like how it's stacked. People have different preferences about how they do it. Whatever works for you or makes it clear for others what you're doing. Okay. So we are going to use the function here, geom point. All right, so we've looked at a bunch of these so far, right? As I mentioned with ggplot, the different shapes are all geoms. So this is geom point. We're going to do mapping. Again, the mapping is not necessarily required. It's just sort of good practice. And then AES on the x-axis, we're going to have percent employment deprived. And on the Y, we will have percent depressed. Another thing that I'll say, I'm making all these caveats. I'm putting spaces here. Sometimes I didn't, like up here, I don't think I did. Or I did that? I don't know. Some places I do, sometimes I don't. It's probably best practice to include them, but Sometimes if you're just doing it for yourself, you're just like, I just want to get it through. I just want to get it to run. All right, so let's start with that. So this will give us a basic ggplot scatterplot. All right, I'm gonna get that up. All right, so what do we think? So it shows us the relationship pretty clearly between employment deprived and depressed, right? So data zones with greater employment deprivation tend to have greater percent depressed, or right, so meaning a greater percentage of people prescribe psychiatric medication. But aesthetically, this is incredibly ugly, right? Like we have these lines, right? These lines that go across. It's like looking at corduroy or something. The reason why is because a lot of the values are integers. So as I said, like we want them near continuous. So this is showing gaps, right? So this is really ugly. So what we can do is actually include this option, which is called jitter, which when I first heard of it and learned about it, I was like, this sounds like cheating. Like, are we allowed to do this? Is this something we're allowed to do? And so jittering, what this does is that it just moves the points just a little bit, so that we can see the data and the distributions much clearer. All right, so we're going to do position equals, quote, jitter. And then what we're also going to do is include alpha. If you remember from the smooth density plot, alpha lightens things. So we're going to do alpha equals 0.1. And what this will do is that it'll allow us to see where the values are much clearer. So we can see, where different points are clustering. Okay. Plus, and then we're going to include labels using labs. All right. And we're going to do it here, and then we're going to be able to steal it and use it in other spots as well. I know it's annoying. Percentage, employment deprived. All right, that's going to our X. Our Y is percentage prescribed psychiatric. That's always a tough word to spell. Medication. And then we could put a title on there. Let's see. Prescribe. I'm just going to steal, instead of typing it again, I'm just going to steal this. This is probably going to be, oh, we want a quote here, right? Okay, told us it was misspelled and then didn't. By employment deprivation, deprived, that works. Okay, and then let's do this. Let's add a plus, and we're going to do theme underscore minimal. And then open. All right, so we're going to use that for now. I think that will work. Okay, so let's highlight it and run it, and hopefully it all works. I didn't get an error. Click on zoom. Okay, so now we still see some lines here, but it's much better. So we can still see the relationship. We see that most values are being clustered down here. That's where that darker is, and that there's fewer of them up here. Okay, we weren't really able to see that as clearly in the previous plot. So that's much nicer. Okay, so as should be becoming very clear, as you might expect, when you're doing data visualization, a lot of it is aesthetics, right? Like getting it to look the way you want, getting it, whatever your individual preferences are. There's a lot of people who are, very serious, take this very serious, which is fair enough. It's sort of like at the end of the day, we want to be able to take our data and our variables and create visualizations so that others can clearly understand what's going on. All right, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.